Welcome to today's Explainer. We are opening the file today on one of the most baffling, just absolutely mind-boggling mysteries in human history. We're looking at a massive, completely forgotten North American city, a metropolis that was bustling, complex, and vibrant, and then, by the year 1400, completely empty. Literally, a ghost town. I'm talking about a place that rivals the great ancient sites of the world, yet it's sitting right there in the middle of what is now the state of Illinois, just waiting for us to ask the right questions. Let's get right into it.
Think about this for a second. How does a city of 20,000 people just vanish? It's almost impossible to wrap your head around. At its peak, this city housed between 10 and 20,000 people. That makes it one of the largest urban centers anywhere on the globe at that point in history. And then, over roughly 2 centuries, the population just shrank until no one was left. There's no written language, which means no records, no goodbye letter. And as we'll see in a minute, no clear evidence of war or an outside invasion either. Just silence and a set of enormous earthen mounds.
Okay, let's dive into this. Picture the year 1100. London was a growing, significant medieval city, right? But at that exact same time, Cahokia was actually larger than any city in England. Think about that. It was by far the largest city north of Mexico before European contact. We kind of have this lingering misconception about pre-Columbian North America being sparsely populated. But guys, this was a highly organized, incredibly dense metropolis.
22 million. That is the jaw-dropping number of cubic feet of soil that was moved to build the city's centerpiece, known today as Monk's Mound. And here is the absolute kicker. Every single basket of that soil was moved entirely by hand. No metal tools, no beasts of burden, no wheels. It's a stepped earthen pyramid that still exists today, rising 100 feet above the Illinois plain. To give you a sense of its massive footprint, the base of Monk's Mound actually covers more ground than the Great Pyramid of Giza. Literally, it is that big.
The infrastructure of this city is absolutely breathtaking, especially when you consider how incredibly fast it materialized. Around the year 1050, which is practically overnight by archaeological standards, Cahokia just burst into existence. Archaeologists can actually see it in the soil record as this concentrated burst of massive construction. The city featured a grand central plaza that was meticulously cleared and leveled, covering the equivalent of 45 modern football fields. It was used for communal feasts, massive sporting events, and religious ceremonies. Surrounding this were over 100 smaller mounds arranged with really careful astronomical precision. This wasn't some random settlement. It was a brilliantly planned urban center that took profound engineering and coordination.
And this brilliantly illustrates our next huge clue: who actually lived here? Cahokia wasn't just an isolated city, it was the vibrant center of a vast continental network. Archaeologists used a technique called strontium isotope testing on human remains found at the site. Basically, by looking at the chemistry in their teeth, they can tell where a person spent their childhood. The results? Roughly a third of Cahokia's population wasn't originally from there. They migrated from distant regions, and they brought all sorts of goods with them. Copper from the Great Lakes, shells all the way from the Gulf of Mexico, and chert stone from quarries hundreds of miles away. Cahokia was a literal center of gravity, drawing people and resources from across the entire continent.
But then, the story takes a really dark turn right in the city's ceremonial center. Construction booms in 1050, but by 1175, things are definitely changing. The residents suddenly build a massive defensive wooden wall, a palisade, right around their most sacred ground. And over the next 100 years, they rebuild that heavy, labor-intensive wall 4 separate times. That single fact tells a deeply suspenseful story. You don't repeatedly cut down thousands of trees to build a massive, defensive wall unless you feel severely threatened. The paranoia in Cahokia was real.
Which brings us to the most eerie part of the mystery. They built this wall as if they were preparing for a massive attack, but an attack never seems to have come. There is this eerie absence of mass battle graves. There's no destruction layer in the soil, ash or rubble, that would be consistent with a siege or an outside invasion. The wall went up, but the enemy never materialized in the archaeological record. So we really have to ask ourselves, if it wasn't war from an outside invader, what exactly were they so afraid of?
Now, what's really interesting about this is that modern science is actually overturning decades of assumptions here. For a long time, the old theory was environmental collapse. Experts thought Cahokia just exhausted its resources, that deforestation, combined with the flooding of the Mississippi floodplain, ruined their maize-based agriculture, leading to soil depletion and starvation. But a 2024 study published in the journal The Holocene, led by archaeologist Natalie Mueller, basically debunked this. Her research shows the Cahokians had highly sophisticated agricultural knowledge. They knew how to adapt to environmental stress. They wouldn't just collapse under it. So Mueller's conclusion shifts the focus completely. The environment didn't break Cahokia. Social and political unrest did.
And that brings us to the uncomfortable physical evidence. If climate didn't destroy Cahokia and outside armies didn't destroy Cahokia, we have to look inward. When archaeologists started digging beneath some of these mounds, they were hoping to find clues about daily life. Instead, what they found stopped them cold. It pointed away from a natural disaster and straight toward a terrifying internal threat.
Beneath one of the mounds, researchers uncovered a mass burial site containing over 250 bodies, and the details are truly chilling. Many of these bodies were young women, arranged in ways that strongly suggest ritual sacrifice. Even more horrifying, based on the positioning of the remains, some had actually been buried alive. This wasn't the result of a battle, and it wasn't an isolated incident. This burial was directly associated with Cahokia's elite ruling class. Evidence of internal violence and strict coercion appears at multiple points in the city's archaeological record.
As archaeologist Thomas Emerson points out, the real danger at Cahokia came from the people on top, not from outside attackers. So the crucial point is this. The compelling theory emerging now is that Cahokia's leadership simply demanded too much. Between the grueling labor needed to build those massive mounds, the constant tribute required to sustain the elites, and the horrifying reality of ritual sacrifice, the leadership essentially broke the social contract that held the city together. Those defensive walls, they might not have been to keep outside invaders out. They might have been built to protect the elites from their own people.
Which leads us to a fascinating investigative twist that popular accounts almost always ignore. You always hear about the mysterious vanished city where the Mississippian people magically died off in some sort of sudden apocalypse. But actually, scratch that. That is fundamentally incorrect. They didn't vanish into thin air. They didn't just die off. They made a highly conscious, deliberate choice.
Let's look at this and see how it builds, because the archaeological evidence tells a very clear story of survival. First, the people realized the system was intolerable, so they abandoned it. But they didn't just scatter into the wind. They relocated and dispersed across the wider Mississippi and Ohio River valleys. And we know they survived because their culture survived. Their distinct pottery styles and their mound-building traditions show up in new communities for generations afterward. The city of Cahokia was abandoned, sure, but the people who built it were not gone.
In fact, fast forward a few hundred years to the early 1700s. French missionaries arrived in the region, and they encountered a tribe called the Cahokia, who were part of the larger Illinois Confederation. This living connection is actually exactly where the archaeological site gets its modern name today. While the direct lineage from the Mississippian builders to this specific tribe is still a subject of scholarly debate, the geographical and cultural connection is undeniable. The story of these people absolutely did not end in the year 1400.
Ultimately, the resolution to this grand mystery is perhaps the most deeply human story of all. They simply walked away. No enemy conquered them. No massive flood washed them away overnight. The people of Cahokia exercised their human agency. They looked at a broken, oppressive system that no longer served them, and they essentially went on a permanent strike. They picked up their lives, left the largest city in pre-Columbian North America behind, and chose a different future.
And that leaves us here, staring at the incredible mounds that still rise above the Illinois plains today. Cahokia reminds us that history isn't just something that happens to people, it's something people make, sometimes by choosing to walk away. It leaves you wondering, what other forgotten chapters of human history are sitting right beneath our feet, just waiting for us to ask the right questions? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I'll see you next time.